that Sarah Jacobs is missing today. So Sarah usually chairs these LRG meetings, and she will be at the upcoming workshops that we do, but unfortunately couldn't make it today. So as the purpose of the LRG workshop today is primarily around the non-statutory consultation, but you will be receiving further engagement over the coming year, and we're hoping that the next time we meet we will be in person at an interactive workshop, which will be really good to meet everyone. So I'll hand over to Rupal, who's from East West Rail team, to give an introduction.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm Rupal Patel, the EWR's DCO and engagement manager, working with the teams to help and support get ready for a DCO submission and examination, which I'll cover over shortly after the introductions.
Thanks, Rupal. I hand over to Mo.
Yeah, hi. Mo Al-Sardari, area manager for the Bedford area.
Thanks, John.
Good evening all. My name is John Franklin Ferrer. I am the engineering manager for the technical partner who are supporting East West Rail. And I've been working on this project for a better part of 2 years now. So nice to see you all. I see some familiar faces that I met at one of the consultation events. So good to see you again.
Thanks, John. Leah.
Hi everyone, I'm Leah Bargota, part of the East West Rail Environment team.
Thank you. So if possible, could you, all of the attendees, if you could just drop in the chat your name and which ward area that you represent within Bedford, that would be really helpful. Thank you. So just to go over some housekeeping, so the meeting is being recorded this evening and transcribed to help us with our meeting minutes. So if you have an issue with that, please do let us know. If you could stay on camera and on mute throughout, apart from when you have questions. And when you do have questions, if you could just use the raise hand function on Teams, and then we can go along to everyone in order that you've asked your question or given feedback. Yeah, I think that's all in terms of housekeeping. If you can carry on putting your names and your areas into the chat, that would be really helpful. So I just wanted to give a bit of an introduction to these workshops. So these are the non-statutory consultation feedback workshops. So the purpose of these is to discuss the detail that's provided within our non-statutory consultation and provide you with an early opportunity to input into that design process and to get some of your local knowledge on the impacts and opportunities in the area and to gather your specific local feedback. So these sessions will be interactive, so we'll be asking for feedback throughout the session. So please do give your feedback as we go along. It's really important that we hear from you, and we want this to be a two-way conversation this evening. And finally, the workshops are taking place during the consultation period. So whilst we really want to hear your feedback this evening, it's also really important that you give your feedback formally through the consultation process. And the closing date of the consultation is the 24th of January. So in order to make the best use of our time this evening and stay on track in terms of the topics that we want to cover, we've just popped some terms of references on this slide. So we're seeking feedback only on the non-statutory consultation proposals and the route that is outlined within those proposals. So we're welcoming your feedback around the community benefits and impacts in the local area, any land or property requirements, as well as environment, sustainability, any issues with construction or logistics, as well as the local traffic and transport, as well as connectivity to the stations. So due to time constraints this evening, we don't want to look over any historic engagement and have any discussions around how we got to the point where we are at now. We want to keep the discussions on the non-statutory proposals. We'll be collecting all of your feedback, and we will be sharing a list of like a feedback log with you and we'd really appreciate your review of that so we can get all of the feedback correct and that those can be inputted into our design change process. Next slide, please. So as well as these online workshops that we're carrying out with the LRG parish councils and ward members, we've also been doing some engagement with the local authorities. So we had an in-person workshop in December last year with the Bedford Borough Council officers. So that was a really good workshop, and we covered quite a lot of ground in that workshop, but I've listed some of the key topics here. So they were especially interested in environmental impacts, so noise impacts, as well as potential flooding impacts in Bedford town centre. They were really interested around the traffic and congestion impacts of the project, especially in terms of the rebuilding of any road bridges. So had some concerns around that. We had some really good discussions on the 2 stations. So good discussions about connectivity, the facilities at those stations, and car parking at those stations. The Bedford Borough Council are still opposed to the 6 tracks through Bedford Centre and would support to keep on 4 tracks. And they also gave us some really good feedback around some of the local proposals around the viaduct and the A6 carriageway, as well as Stewartby and Tempsford Station. Great. So now I will hand over to Rupal, who will give you an update on where we're at with the project currently.
Great, thank you, Chloe. So as you know, this is a major infrastructure project with lots going on in the development process, and there's a lot of assessment that happens. So we just wanted to kind of show you a snapshot of the timeline of where we were, where we are now, and where we plan to be in the near future. So far, if you look back to the beginning of the timeline, we so far have held 2 non-statutory consultations, route update announcement, sharing our preferred route. Lots of engagement with yourselves through LRGs throughout this process. We are now in the stage of the process where we're consulting on the current proposals, where we're using all the feedback we get from the non-statutory consultation engagement with all our stakeholders and consider that as part of the design process. So we're not only just engaging with yourselves, we're looking at statutory and non-statutory stakeholders as well. And also we then plan, after that period, we plan to move forward by refining the design development, which includes environmental assessment work and mitigation development. This will then be presented at statutory consultation, and we'll have more information on the impact of the project that we'll be able to share with you. After the statutory consultation, we will do the same again and capture the feedback we have received, address it and consider it in the design, where we can develop it further and really essentially shape it for the DCO submission and get it ready for examination. Next slide, please. So just a bit of summary of the non-stat consultations so far and where we are with these. There have been about 10 in-person events so far with about 3,000 attendees and counting, which is a great number for us, and shows that we've had some really positive engagement with individuals and local stakeholders. We've had 2 online events which have taken place. The last one was actually yesterday, which was very well attended as well. We've had over about 100 attendees attend these and participate. And as of January, we received over 2,000 responses. And again, this is counting as we have a couple of more weeks to capture and gather responses. Down the bottom of the right hand side, you'll see the remaining events that are taking place. We currently have one happening now, actually, taking place at the moment in Comberton, and a few more left for the upcoming weeks. And we hope that you've managed to be able to attend some of them. We would also like to kind of, encourage you to look at the website if you haven't already. You'll find a bank of information and material available for you to kind of download and digest, as well as a virtual consultation room to learn more about the project in detail. Thank you. To Mo.
Thank you.
Thanks. So I think I'll just provide a brief overview of what's changed in the consultation, as well as just an overarching slide on what the proposals in Bedford are. I think the rest will be talked about in more detail when John presents. Hopefully this doesn't come as a surprise to you. We've changed our service pattern as part of the third non-statutory consultation, so that the services that run from Cambridge to Bedford Station no longer turn around at Bedford Station, but actually turn elsewhere. In this instance, Stewartby. What that does is that it deconflicts some of the ops considerations in the area and means that we don't have to provide a third platform at Bedford Station, meaning that our proposals have improved slightly in as far as we're only providing 2 platforms and we've got additional land to be able to provide interchange facilities and general station facilities. 2 permutations of the actual service pattern, one that's aligned with service concept 1 and one that's aligned with service concept 2. From a Bedford perspective, the same number of trains would operate really. I think there's no changes between the service patterns in as far as Bedford's concerned. Next slide, please. Powering the trains, really just reiterating what we announced in the actual events. So discontinuous electrification being our preferred solution for powering the trains and the implications of that in terms of the infrastructural proposals. And if I can get the next slide, please. And then our principles around freight and reiteration or reiterating the fact that we are predominantly a passenger service. However, as part of our proposals, we're aiming to maintain the existing freight in key commuter hubs, including Oxford, Bicester, Marston Vale Line, and Bedford. And we're also considering planned increased future growth that's required to enable wider economic growth. And these proposals will mature as part of the next consultation. One more slide, please. Yeah, okay, so I mean, just the generic summary slides, which hopefully you all know about now. Bedford extends 5.4 kilometers, that is section 3 in the consultation, from Amtel Road in Kempston to Clapham Road, next to the River Great Ouse. I already talked about the 3 platforms at Bedford Station, so I won't repeat that. And if I can get the next slide, please. Yeah, a summary of the scope or the proposals, really. And as I say, these will be talked about in a lot more detail when John presents and shows you plans and profiles. But in essence, we're relocating Bedford St John's Station to the site of the current Britannia Road car park, closer to Bedford Hospital. We're building a new multi-storey car park to replace lost car parking that is owned by the hospital as well as by other stakeholders in the area, as well as consideration of what happens during the actual construction of the multi-storey car park. We're building 2 additional tracks or 2 new tracks across the entire area, really. If you were to think about the realignment at BSJ being a new piece of P-way, we're moving Jowett sidings to the Coldwell Walk depot area, making space for the railway. We're building a new station at Bedford Station and providing other station improvements. And last but not least, we're building a 1.1 kilometer viaduct that crosses several highways and the Great River Ouse twice to join an embankment in the core section, area in Clapham. I'll just hand over to Leah to provide some slides on environment.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Mo. So the environment is a key consideration in the development of our proposals, and to demonstrate our commitment to this, we are taking a proactive approach in terms of our environmental considerations and using environmental data as a fundamental part of developing designs that avoid, reduce, and compensate for potential impacts on the environment. Since 2021, the government has published a new policy setting out its environmental goals, and in response to that, we've updated and aligned our environmental sustainability strategy, which is also published on the East West Rail website. So central to our approach are the 6 environmental sustainability pillars. So those are the natural environment, carbon, climate resilience, historic environment and landscape, circular economy, and the people and the community. So moving on to the next slide, further consideration of the potential likely environmental impacts of the proposals and initial mitigations are described in the environmental update report. This is also included as part of the consultation and available on our website. The mitigation proposals can be viewed on the plan and profile drawings, which also support the consultation. So we will prepare a preliminary environmental information report for the statutory consultation, as well as producing an environmental statement, which will be submitted as part of our application for the development consent order. Further design development will take place in parallel with the environmental impact assessment and supporting surveys, modelling, technical assessments. Information on the EIA process will be used to inform the development for appropriate mitigation measures as part of the ongoing design development process. And it will also support more detailed analysis of biodiversity measures needed to deliver biodiversity net gain. You may have been contacted by the Planning Inspectorate in regard to our scoping report. So the environmental scoping report sets out the methodology and scope of the environmental impact assessment, which will be used to produce the environmental statement. Just as a note, so the scoping report doesn't form part of the non-statutory consultation that's being held at the moment, as it's being managed by the Planning Inspectorate. So the Planning Inspectorate will reach out to all the relevant consultees to request feedback. So I just wanted to make sure that any feedback on the scoping report that you might have, if you have any comments, it will need to go back to the Planning Inspectorate, who will then collate all the feedback that they receive and provide a consolidated scoping opinion to us. That was all for me, but any questions, let me know.
And I'm gonna read this slide in the absence of my colleagues from Land and Property who are due to join to take questions. But in essence, I think overall, really, our approach to the land and property is to seek to minimise the impact as much as we can, or as much as reasonably possible. Of course, in the Bedford area, there are many instances where we're not able to do that. But in essence, I think the one thing that I want to bring your attention to is the publication of the Secretary of State of Transport of the Safeguarding Directive, which really allows for those who are within the safeguarding direction to apply for statutory blight provisions, which we believe is an improvement on the previous position when it comes to land and property. But yeah, I think hopefully my colleague Ian can join and field the questions that you may have or clarity that you may seek.
Great, thank you, Mo. Oh, we have a question.
Hiya.
Hello.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yep, I can hear you.
Yeah, okay. I know it's been mentioned about the Britannia State, there will be a station there, a new build station, and then multi-story car park will be built. But obviously, there will be a disruption during this multi-story car park. Will the multi-story car park will be built before any work started? And where exactly this car park will be? It will be the where car park right now. And obviously, when you're working, they won't be able to park there, so they will be parking on the streets and everywhere. Will you work with the Bedford Borough Council to increase the parking time? Because the only concern in Coldwell is about parking and people parking on the streets, and they won't find the parking spaces because it's CPZ zone, mean control parking zone, and people have permits. They're already upset because I think nighttime the hospital staff park in there, or whoever come for emergency, there's not enough space. So will be anything will be in place before the work started? Or will you work with the Bedford Borough Council parking department to increase the time so the residents won't be disturbed? I know the Coldwell is the only ward who welcome East West Rail project, and all the councillors are supporting the station there near the hospital. We see the benefit being a station near to the hospital. So only the problem at the moment is parking issue. And the second, the depot will be, the depot where they store the equipment and everything on the Coldwell Walk. But yeah, it's Coldwell Walk, isn't it, behind where the already a depot there. So people think there will be a noise or something there because at the moment it's quiet and dead. And, you know, there was some of the land which is not been managed very good by the railway. I don't know, whoever, they said the land belonged to railway station, but can you assure us that, you know, the land will be managed properly and there will be not enough noise there while they're storing the stuff in the depot, working in that depot over the nights, and the parking issue? These two main concerns the resident raised with us.
Do you want me to take that?
Yes, please. Tom.
You are preempting my next part of the presentation. So what we'll do is if you'll let me, we'll go on to looking at the plan and profile drawings and some of the other consultation material. What my proposal is to take you through this in 3 sections. So this ties in with how the design team have developed the design over the past 18 months. And what we'll do is your first question will be covered under area 1, your second question will be covered under area 2. And what I would like to do to try and focus feedback on specific areas as we go through and not be jumping all over the place, if we can go through it in this geographic order that's shown on screen now, that would be great. And then at the end, if there's any further questions that pop into people's mind as we're going through, then we can pick them up in the any other business at the end, if that would be agreeable to you.
That's fine.
Thank you. Okay, so what we'll do is I'll share my screen in a second, but just before, I'll just go through this slide. As I say, we have developed the design in 3 discrete areas. So area 1 is South Bedford and Bedford St John's. So what we'll look at here is the realignment of the curve south of Bedford St John's station. We've referred to that within the design team as the MVL curve. So if I slip into saying that, that's what I'm referring to. I will talk about the relocation of Bedford St John's station, particularly around the facilities, the access, the car park. We've obviously had a lot of feedback on the highways, the impact on the road bridges, particularly Ampthill Road and Caldwell Street, either end of Bedford St John's station or the proposed location of Bedford St John's station. And then there's some property impacts in the area as well. So we've allowed around 30 minutes for that. So what I'll do is I will give a slightly more detailed overview of why the design looks as it does at the moment, and then we'll get into the detail and of your feedback. After that, we'll look at the Bedford station area. So that covers everything from the crossing of the River Ouse. It looks at Jowett sidings being relocated to Caldwell Walk, Ford End Road, which obviously everybody's aware is the main east-west artery through the town centre. Bedford Station, which Mo has already given a nice overview to. Talk about the car parks there as well, and the track layout north of Bedford, where we've got the tracks adjacent to the Midland Main Line. We've got and then when we go into area 3, that's where we'll start looking at the property impacts, Bromham Road and the A6 Great Ouse Way, and then the new viaduct as we head into the core section. So if I just share my screen next, please let me know when you can see the plan and profile drawings. Yes, I can see some thumbs up. Wonderful. Apologies, I'm going to be looking at my other screen rather than the camera, just because these are I've got much more space on my larger screen to my left. So these are the exact same drawings as have been published as part of the non-statutory consultation. These are all available on the East West Rail website. They were available at the consultation events. So if you've been to those events or had a look on the website, this is exactly the same material as you will have already seen. The first 1.3 kilometres of the Bedford section from the crossing of Ampthill Road overbridge at the top of the drawing through to the start of the MVL curve. So this curve here just to the south of Bedford St John's station is largely unchanged. There's no proposed realignment of any of the track. Any works that would be undertaken in that area would be inside the existing rail corridor. So the specifics of any interventions in there will be determined as we go on. It's likely to be things like changes to signalling, moving of track joints and things like that, but work within the corridor. So there is nothing of significance in that first 1.3 kilometres that is worth going into any detail of today. Once we come to Sandhurst Road footbridge, this is where the existing railway goes from the 2-track corridor that we have on the left here to the single track railway that runs around this very tight curve here and through the existing Bedford St John's station. The radius of this curve is approximately 180 to 200 metres in radius. It's very tight. So from a railway geometry perspective, that is much tighter than we would typically like. And it is necessary to realign that curve for 2 reasons: to achieve the required permissible speed for the train service specification, and in conjunction with that, the relocation of Bedford St John's station. So the existing station has very short platforms. The new proposed station would have longer platforms. In this iteration of the design, they're shown as 154 metres long. That's on the assumption of a 6-car train service. The track then, where it gets realigned to the west, moves from a 180 to 200 metre radius. This radius here is 260 metres. There is a very fine balancing act to be applied on this particular piece of track geometry. The tighter the curve, obviously, the greater the forces at the wheel rail interface. That in turn generates noise and vibration. So the flatter we can make that curve, the more we can potentially reduce that noise and vibration impact. Flattening the curve too much, however, obviously moves the track geometry further up the page as we look at it here. That would then potentially have additional impact on the playground associated with the Caldwell Community Centre and bring the railway line closer to other properties. So there's that fine balancing act of achieving a flatter radius to reduce noise and vibration, but not moving the track too close to the properties. So what we've sought to do there is get that fine line in the middle. The 2 thicker pink lines we've got here show the proposed extent of some noise mitigation. So the specific position of those is shown indicatively in terms of their location relative to the track, but they give an indication over the extent of which some noise barriers could be applied to mitigate the noise and vibration that would be associated with that curve. I will talk about Ampthill Road and Caldwell Street together in a second, but first, as we go into the Bedford St John's station area, the multi-storey car park that is being proposed is located to the west of the railway. So this is sited on part of the existing surface car park, and this has been positioned such to correlate with the master plan of the Bedford Hospital, who have got plans for a multi-storey car park in that area as well. For simplicity, we haven't shown all the details of the station on this drawing because it just wouldn't be clear. But as I say, you can see the 2 platforms. There's station buildings and facilities shown on the east, with the intention that they could be accessed from the east through the Melbourne Street car park. Once we go past the station, we then we climb up to the crossing of the River Ouse. There's 2 crossovers proposed in this area here between Caldwell Street and the River Ouse. Once again, we haven't shown them on this drawing just because you wouldn't be able to see the detail, but that is a piece of track infrastructure that's necessary for the operational movements of the trains. Ampthill Road on the left here, Caldwell Street on the right. Realignment of those highways is necessary for 2 reasons. The primary reason, however, is the inclusion of provision for overhead electrification of the railway. What we have aimed to do is to minimise the change to these highways by lowering the railway as much as we reasonably can, whilst lifting the highways as much as is necessary. Once again, this is a very fine balancing act. There are various combinations of electrification infrastructure that can be undertaken. There's various combinations of structure depth for the replacement highways that can also be undertaken. What we've sought to show here is the reasonable worst case for the design. So as we go through into more detailed design, we are looking at how we can minimize the changes to both the track and the highways, the electrification infrastructure, and the structural depth of the bridges themselves, to try and minimize the change to the highways in this area. And that's something that we're progressing with as we go through into statutory consultation in the future. In terms of the necessity to replace these structures, even if electrification wasn't coming through, there is likely still to be a need, particularly on Caldwell Street, because of the position of the tracks relative to the existing bridge piers. So where the tracks come down from the River Ouse, the existing design, the tracks widen. We can't achieve that, unfortunately, because of the crossovers that are needed in this area. So we have to maintain the tracks being parallel, which would necessitate the replacement of the deck of this structure as a minimum. Where we lift Caldwell Street, that necessitates the realignment of the junction of Prebend Street here. During construction, what we have proposed is a temporary realignment of the junction between Caldwell Street and Prebend Street through the council car park to maintain traffic flows in a north-south manner. As you'll all be aware, there are very few crossings of the river, and it was thought from a traffic and transport perspective that the closure of that junction would necessitate a temporary measure to maintain traffic flows in the area. I mentioned about some property impacts. There is the Crown Care Home on the corner of Britannia Road and Caldwell Street, where we lift Caldwell Street, and due to the proximity of the building to the highway, that necessitates the demolition of that structure. There is also a block of flats immediately adjacent to the Crown Care Home. However, they are not directly impacted by the physical infrastructure. I don't dispute that there is an impact on those buildings, but the physical infrastructure of lifting the road and the multi-storey car park do not directly impact or necessitate the acquisition of those properties. To the east, there are two businesses. There's HSS Hire and Motivation, I think it's called, where we're lifting Caldwell Street, that impacts the junction into the front of their businesses. So the intention there is an alternative route into the back of those businesses, so they remain viable, but noting that that would be a different access through Holmes Street to still maintain the viability of those businesses. There would also be a temporary impact on some of the properties in the block of flats here on the west. That is simply during construction, where we need to build a retaining wall where the track gets lowered through this area here. That's a temporary impact on a handful of car parking spaces that run along the boundary of the railway, but they would hopefully only be impacted for a short period during construction of that wall. I'm going to take a pause there. That covers the bulk of the engineering specifics in that area. Hopefully that gives a bit of a reasonable overview of what is proposed in that first area of the Bedford scheme. I think I'll just open the floor up to comments and questions and any feedback that you'd like to give. Do it in order of hands raised. So, Eric.
Hi there. Just two very quick questions. What happens to the parking for County Hall when you put that temporary alignment in? And then the second question is, I mean, very focused on design here, but how are you considering how you're going to construct it? Because you can come up with a fantastic design in a restricted area, but actually it's next to impossible to deliver.
Yeah. So as a project, we note obviously the impact of parking in general, whether that be both at the council offices and at the hospital car park, that there will be an impact on parking during that time. We do understand that there are some underutilized car parks in the vicinity. There's also opportunities within the construction zones that are shown in purple here, potentially to have some additional temporary car parking whilst that work is undertaken. But the specifics of that are still within development. In terms of the second question of how we actually build it, was there any particular part that you were interested in there? I'm going to go for highways as being the most contentious point.
Well, yes, it is highways, because you're looking to reconstruct 2 bridges there on 2 key arterial routes.
Yes,
and it's how you do that, and the consequential effect of doing that. I mean, physically you can just go in and do it, but it's just the impact, and how can you manage people movement whilst that's happening? And I mean, you couldn't do both in parallel, for instance. I wouldn't have thought.
No. So the conversations we've had with the Borough Council across all of the highways, because it's not just these 2, there's Ford End Road, there's Bromham Road, there's the A6 Great Ouse Way realignment, is that there is a clear instruction that only one highway is to be worked on at any one time. And the traffic modelling that would be associated with that would obviously vary for each of those structures, depending on the order that they are constructed or reconstructed in.
Thank you.
Thank you. So next we have Zara.
Thank you. Just picking up on the point that you made in answer to Eric about the modelling to be expected in due course. Can you give us a sense of when that is? Is that going to come as part of the StatCon, or when can we start? There's a lot of modelling and a lot of decisions that are outstanding that we're waiting for. So do you have a sense at the moment of when we can start expecting some of that to kind of come into play? And then I've got a couple of questions about the car park at Bedford Hospital, please.
No, that's fine. The TNT, so it's traffic and transport modelling, is an ongoing process. So some modelling has already fed into various parts of the design, and the team are looking at the current iteration of the design at the moment. I couldn't tell you a specific date off the top of my head as to when that would be released. I don't know, Mo or Anthony, whether that's something, a date that you can share.
Yeah, I mean, we'll come out with the information that's required for the modelling as part of the statutory consultation, and that's the work we're undertaking now. And that will continue to be refined all the way through to the DCO application.
Okay, thank you. So in terms of the car parking at Bedford Hospital, one of my questions might be better covered by the land team. But you made a point about there being plans by the hospital already for a multi-storey car park. So can you expand on that a little bit, please? Are you suggesting that you are in agreement with the hospital currently for the car parking plans, and that you're kind of merging plans, or are you is your the one that you've got here on the drawing, is that superseding the hospital's existing plans for car parking?
So the hospital have developed their plans independently of East West Rail, and when we have discussed their plans and their wider master plan with us, their proposed multi-storey car park is in the same location as our proposed multi-storey car park. So there is a synergy between the 2 proposals there. Now, the specifics between their design and our design are going to need to be joined as development continues, but they are currently sitting in the same proposed location.
Okay, so they're in the same location. In terms of size, are they a similar size, or because obviously you're trying to put in a car parking structure that takes account of rail users, whereas the hospital would have only been planning for predominantly staff and maybe some visitors. So I would take it from that yours is a bigger car park that you're planning, or?
I don't have the specific number that they have proposed in terms of
Right.
number of spaces to hand, but in terms of what is applicable under the DCO application, we are looking at effectively the like-for-like replacement of car parking that is lost through the East West Rail scheme at this location.
But we're not looking at a like-for-like user base going forward, are we? So
there,
is that
so
being
this-
accommodated?
So in terms of demand numbers, there is a minimal number applied to East West Rail demand in that multi-storey car park, and the Borough Council have got a preference for vehicular access to be predominantly at Bedford Midland Station as opposed to Bedford St John's.
Okay, and just to really, this is really important because we're getting a lot of correspondence about the hospital. I'm sure all the councillors are, even though it's not in necessarily our wards. Are you able to say that Bedford Hospital and EWR are currently aligned and on the same page about what you're offering? Are they happy? Are you in regular consultation with them? And are they happy with your proposals?
I'm going to come in on that, Sarah. I think your initial point about the increase in use, if you like, is, I think, to John's point, EWR's use of the car park is minimal. I think it's a factor of 1 to 10. If roughly speaking, if you were to look at replacement car parking, which is 9 times or 10 times more what the EWR provision is at that car park. I think in terms of alignment, the principle that we've got here is we are 100% sure that we need to re-provide all of the car parking that is lost in that area. All of the car parking is not actually owned by the hospital. However, it is actually operated or used by the hospital. So in as far as trying to develop an MOU and a way forward, there's a lot of complex commercial negotiations that are taking place with the hospital that I cannot comment on in this forum. But in essence, that is the ambition, that is the EWR ambition, that is 100% where we're driving this, to try and get to a position where the location of the car park is aligned with all stakeholders, not only the hospital. As it turns out, this location seems the best one. And that is the basis on which we're developing the designs. What I can assure you of is that there will be a multi-storey car park to replace the lost car parking, and the operation of the hospital will not be jeopardized by the EWR scheme. It's probably the strong overarching position that we find ourselves in. With the details of the actual agreements are, whether they're happy or not happy what we're providing is a complex negotiation that we're going through at the moment.
Okay.
Does that answer, or?
I think the non-answer answers it. Thank you, Mo. Yeah, okay. That's okay. So I've got questions about the red lines and the impact, but I guess that would be lands and property team, or would that be, it's not going to be engineering?
It depends. Do you want to ask the question?
Yeah, okay. So there's a patch of Bedford Hospital that falls within the red lines. You've already alluded to the fact that a lot of the land that Bedford Hospital is on isn't owned by Bedford Hospital, but can you give an indication for us about how much of the land that is within the red lines is owned by Bedford Hospital? So that's going to have an impact on the development of Bedford Hospital going forward. If they are sitting on land that is under a safeguarding directive, that's going to impinge what Bedford Hospital can do going forward, isn't it?
That's absolutely right, and those that's been brought to our attention by the hospital. I think the sweeping statement I can make here in this forum is that the land that is shown in red on that drawing is the land that we seek to require. And to put it simply, the bit that's in green, as well as the bit that's surrounding it, just to the edges of it, that square there is the hospital land. The rest is Network Rail land, and then to the right, I think John alluded to the care home and the blocks of flats. Now, in developing our solution, yes, you're right, there is going to be some impact. We've safeguarded some land from the hospital, and it makes us a statutory consultee in their planning applications, but we are in discussions with them with a view to remove any clashes whenever they arise as part of our design development. So our commitment really is to enable their development as much as we can. That detail, again, is emerging as a result of the conversations we're having with them currently, and subject to two-way NDAs and all sorts of commercial sensitivities. But we're very well aware of that issue, and we are working really hard at trying to deconflict all of our proposals with their master plan proposals. That's our starting point.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Next we have Councillor Atkins.
Thank you. First of all, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, we
fine.
can.
Lovely. Yeah, some of my questions have already been asked, so I won't repeat them. But there was one bit which is around Borough Hall. I think, John, you said that it was a temporary bend, but
Yes.
the land that you'll be taking is nowhere near the height of the highway. There's a big drop for the car park. So therefore, if it's temporary, you'd have to build it up, and therefore it's unlikely that it would go back to car parking.
I wouldn't say it was unlikely to go back to car parking. Yes, I agree. You would have to build the land up to be able to provide that temporary route, but I would expect that land to be returned to whatever was necessary upon completion. It is there purely to facilitate that traffic flow whilst that junction between Caldwell Street and Prebend Street is remodelled. I don't see that there should be a reason to not return it afterwards.
Yeah, and it might make sense to keep it and keep the bend in for the traffic flow after you've finished with it. I didn't quite catch what was happening to the two businesses opposite.
Well, let me go to these slides. Hang on, let me see if we got the... That's not in there, it's in the report. Hang on a sec, let me find the right picture for you. It's easier for me to describe. Okay, so the pale blue line that we've got going along the centre of the highways is the extent of the realignment. So because Caldwell Street has to be lifted to achieve the electrification clearances under the bridge, and because of the existing steep gradients on that road, it takes quite a long time to regrade the highways back to the existing level, which is why it extends so far. What that results in is that the entrance to the car parks for the two businesses ends at a level difference between their car park and the road. So you could no longer turn from the main road into their car park. So what we've looked at is there an alternative access to that? And potentially there is from the rear via Holmes Street. So that's the principle of where that bit of the design has come from.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Attic asked quite a lot of questions during your presentation. Have all of those questions been answered?
My apologies, I'm not looking at the chat.
These are the prefacing questions that were asked about whether we'll commit to replacing car park before construction, etc.
So in terms of the proposals for replacing construction, for replacing car parking, the intention has been that the multi-storey would have to be constructed and operational before the rest of the surface car parking is removed.
And there was another question about the impact from noise at a Caldwell depot site due to the relocation of the sidings to the industrial estates.
So I can talk about that very briefly, but we'll go into that detail when we talk about area 2.
Yeah, I suggest we cover that off in the next area.
Yeah, if we can do that in the next area. Yeah, just please remind me of the question.
Okay. Thanks, John. We've got a question from Councillor Gribble.
you very much. To your timelines for example, rebuilding Ampthill Road Bridge, etc.
We can't hear you, Nicola.
Sorry, you're very quiet.
Very quiet.
Sorry, I'm having a problem with the laptop. It's done this. Yeah, can you give me or give us any idea of timelines, please? Obviously, it's going to be done in a stepwise fashion, but from the beginning of the first major works, how long will this take?
So when you look at the reasonable worst case, which is on screen here, so for something like Caldwell Street, I think the overall construction duration is I think it was 20 months is what the construction and logistics team have advised on, but that doesn't necessarily mean the entire road is closed for 20 months because it depends on obviously the enabling works that go with that, what can be done with regards to traffic management, which the actual staging of those works as you build it, as you say, step by step.
Okay, thank you. So it will be major disruption for 20 months. What about as we carry on?
Sorry, what do you mean as we carry on?
Well, so Caldwell Street Bridge, Ampthill Road Bridge, Ford End Road Bridge. What's the timeline for all of this major works in the town centre?
I mean, this is stuff we're not actually put out in the public domain, and we're not consulting on at the moment. I think John's given you his view of what he thinks Ampthill Road duration will be, as well as some of the experts' views. It will be done in a sequential way. I think John introduced the idea that we're undertaking further topographical surveys and more design works to look at exactly what the scope is in this area. So in the absence of having done that and the possibility that that scope may change, I'd be mindful of giving you timelines of what the actual disruption is. I think certainly the point that John was making is not that there will be 20 months of disruption as a result of Ampthill Road reconstruction. I think the point he was trying to make is that there will not be 20 months worth of disruption to the extent that you may imagine, although there will be road closures, and that will be potentially, if I was, providing numbers, perhaps half that. But I think it's best, I think we discuss this when the actual information comes out and is part of the public domain. Yes, there is a number of bridge works that need to be undertaken. Yes, there is a sequence of works that we will have to adhere by. And yes, there will be impacts on the town centre for a few years as a result of these works. I think that's probably, I think it's safe to say.
Thank you. So we're talking years, we're not talking months, we're talking years.
On the whole overall duration of the project, I'd say yes, John, unless...
No, I think that's reasonable. I think I didn't mention the topo survey actually, but I think it's a good point to bring in here, is that we are doing everything we can to look at the specifics of each of these highway crossings. Caldwell Street is the most obvious one because it's the largest of those highways in terms of the extent of realignment. So we're currently procuring topographical survey of the railway and the highway to look at this literally to the millimetre, to try and push this as far as we can to reduce the extent of these works as far as reasonably practicable.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Now we've got Eric Cooper.
Yeah, I've just come back on the traffic modelling, if you don't mind. And my question really is not just about this section, it's about all the sections that you're talking about today. Just to understand a little bit more, because traffic modelling is notoriously difficult to get right and takes an awful long time. And you've really got to get doing it as early as possible. And it's a little bit concerning that you're developing some good detailed designs here, whereas the modelling is almost following behind. Can you just understand, taking not about your rail model, because that's really looking after the event once you built it, but I'm really interested in the construction and how you're going to model and understand the impacts of that, because you will know if you travel around at peak times, some of the network is really congested. and so have your modelling, just really brief understanding. You assume you've got a town model, traffic model. Is it a VISM model, something like that? And have you got a junction models below that where it feeds one into the other? And where are you in the calibration and validation of that? And does it validate across the whole of the network? So when you do your scenario testing, you can have some certainty that it's actually modeling correctly. Lots of questions, I'm afraid, but if you give a broad overview.
No, that's fine. I'm not a traffic and transport modeler, so apologies. I don't have the detail of the specifics of some of those questions. But yes, there are wider models. Yes, there are local junction models that have been undertaken. It's ultimately an iterative process in terms of both design and construction. That a design is produced, it gets tested, it's fed back on, and it's iterated, and it's looked at on both the final design and the construction, the temporary design.
Yeah, so you can't answer the question about whether the model validates well, and does it validate right across the whole area, and when is it going to be ready for testing? If it's not your field, really, is it?
No, well, as I say, on the design is being tested at the moment in terms of the latest iterations.
So the model is therefore in place and up and running, and so does it validate across the whole of Bedford properly?
So the model's been provided to us by Bedford Borough Council. I think I should state that. I think you're absolutely right, Eric. All of that work will take place between now and the GCO application. I think that's what the timeline is. There's a lot of scenario testing you mentioned. There's a lot of mass hold modeling that we need to undertake. We're going to have to make sure that the VISM model does align. We're going to have to calibrate it, as you say.
There are some issues with Borough Bedford's model.
Is that right? Oh, and that's good to know.
I'm aware of. Yeah. Okay, well that's fine. I don't expect any more today, but
no, and as I say,
we'll come back on that, because I'm jumping the gun a little bit. But when you get to the viaduct, when you get to the Sainsbury's roundabout area there, it's particularly challenging in terms of traffic. I expect it is here as well.
That's right. That's absolutely right. And by the time we come out to a statutory consultation, we'll be some way in having established that kind of baseline and developed some testing of that. Yes, and then ultimately it'll culminate in the DCO application. I think some of the work is needed for option selection. Some of the work is actually needed for the DCO application.
Okay, and just a final ask there. Within the traffic update report you've done so far, which is about the final solution. It's very much you're just talking about over 80% in terms of capacity. Well, free flowing is 70%, wherever it is, but I would be particularly interested to see where it is over 100%, where you are getting flow breakdown and where those issues are, because I just saying over 80%, it possibly masks a little bit of what the impact is. So it's just an ask there, maybe a little bit more detail.
Yeah,
okay. We don't have our traffic and transport person on the call today, but we can definitely take that away and get back to you on that.
I'm very conscious of time, that we're still in part one of this and we're already at 6 o'clock. So I think we're all right
on time. We've set half an hour. We've just got to half an hour. So if we could take the two last comments quite quickly, that would be great.
If we do these last two and then we'll move on to the next bit, if that's okay. Peter.
Perfect.
Just a quickie, really, just draw your attention to the fact that your proposal to lower the railway lines between the two bridges by 1 metre, which is on the drawing, will bring it into conflict with the highest recorded levels of flood water coming down the Great Ouse.
Yeah, we're well aware of the challenge here, and this ties in with the Topo survey.
Yeah.
So it's that, as I say, it's that balancing act of, if we don't lower the railway, then we have to lift the roads more, which means longer highway realignments.
Absolutely right. Yes. By my calculations, the ground level between those two bridges is only 18 centimetres above the maximum flood level recorded. So you'll take that away and feed that into your topographic survey?
It is already on our radar, that one. So thank you.
Can I just briefly mention the car park? Obviously, this was a subject of intense local interest, and when I was at the drop-in session at the Great Hall, the old Bedford School, I spoke to David Hughes and also to Will Gallagher, asking about the status of the multi-storey car park and who was planning it, who was going to pay for it. And the unequivocal answer I got was that it had been decided that East West Rail would pick up the bill for that multi-storey car park. Now, your presentation earlier on has said that there's an alternative plan for a car park within the hospital's grand plan, which obviously raises the question as how the two plans for a multi-storey car park sit together and who's going to be footing the bill. Are you able to confirm that the answer given to me by your chief executive is correct, and that the multi-storey car park is part of your build and part of your expected expenditure, with no further liability to anybody else, NHS or the borough, please?
Sorry, Peter, I'll just come in and try and correct the record. We're not suggesting there's going to be two multi-storey car parks near the hospital. The only car park that's proposed is the one that's shown in green on that drawing, and is the one. It is the one that's also being proposed by the hospital. The hospital's already got plans for building a multi-storey car park, and in displacing the car parking in the area, we feel that it's appropriate that we replace it at the location that they want it replaced. In terms of funding the car park, in terms of the capital costs, the position that was conveyed to you by David Hughes and Will is correct. We will be funding the car park. So we will be building the multi-storey car park at this location. Yes, that's correct. But there's only one car park. It's not two.
No, I understood there's only one car park. That's just that there were two plans to provide the one car park.
Sorry, two plans to provide the car park is correct. Sorry, I misunderstood your question then. Yeah.
No, it's just only one car park built by East West Rail and paid for by East West Rail.
Correct.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. And a final question or feedback from Councillor Headley.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, obviously, again, talking about the same bridge. Obviously, the best option is not to have to do anything to the bridge. And you said there was two reasons. One was the electrification, and one was the crossing in the section before the bridge. So I believe you're going to continue to look at things like discontinuous electrification and whether that might have an impact on one of the reasons.
Yep.
And then if that is the case, I assume you will also be able to having a look at some of the other options in terms of track geometry to see if there's other ways of getting that crossing provided. You know, if it comes down to just the crossing, I assume that you'll be exploring whether there's other options of fitting that in. I mean, the tracks don't, I mean, just looking at Google Maps, I know that's not a technical drawing or anything, but the tracks don't seem to diverge till quite close to the bridge, you know, relatively speaking. So I'd hope you'd consider looking at other options for the crossing if that becomes the only sticking point.
So yeah, that's fine. So yeah, you're quite right on the if there's no electrification under that structure, then the requirement to lift the structure changes. So that's obviously one part of that. So yes, in terms of the two crossovers, it's not quite as simple as suggested in terms of the space that those two crossovers take is significant. They are not small pieces of infrastructure, and they would be they effectively fill the whole gap between the road and the river. And you require straight and level track and parallel track to site that infrastructure on. So yes, we would obviously look at everything we can do there, but in the sense that you can't get it through the existing spans, what the scope of works could potentially reduce to would be a deck replacement, changing the pier configuration but keeping the road at broadly the same level, as opposed to the full highway realignment extent that is shown. So it might end up being a much more localized intervention than the much longer intervention that is shown on the drawing at the moment.
I didn't mean to suggest that it was a simple to find alternative engineering solutions. I'm just saying that I'd hope you continue to look for them.
Oh yeah, we will definitely continue to look.
Brilliant,
Right.
thank you. That
Shall we
wraps up
carry on with
Bedford St John's. Yes, please.
the next bit?
Thanks,
Right,
John.
I'm going to try and do this bit reasonably quickly. Right, so as we come over the River Ouse, the crossing of the River Ouse is a fixed site, both horizontally, and vertically. The work that we've undertaken thus far is looking to conclude that some strengthening works would be required on that structure. However, we are hopeful that the structure itself would not need to be replaced. If it did turn out that it would need to be replaced, then it would need to be put in the same location, horizontally and vertically, because you cannot move the track horizontally or vertically in any significant manner at that point. Once you are north of the river, we continue with the two-track alignment that goes through the northern end of the existing GTR Jowett stabling roads and under Ford End Road. Because we sever the end of these roads, it means they are no longer viable for use for the GTR stabling. So they stable 12 car units in here, which are 243 meters long, I think, off the top of my head. So obviously, if we remove some of that track, it's no longer viable for that rolling stock. Therefore, we have to relocate on a like-for-like basis elsewhere. The preferred option for relocation of those stabling roads is down to the Caldwell Walk site. So what's shown here at the moment is the 5 stabling roads on a like-for-like basis. In reality, a lot of other additional infrastructure in terms of buildings, offices, and everything else that is associated with running the depot would be within the rest of the land on this site. But for simplicity, we've just shown the track footprint at the moment. Where the boundary goes around the existing Caldwell depot, and we're showing the construction site across everything, that's purely with where rail systems would have to be tied in. So there is no intention of changing anything within the existing rail depot. It's simply there in terms of the ability to tie in all the rail systems to make sure the Midland Main Line, the proposed sidings and the existing sidings all work safely together. As we go back this way, there are some existing Network Rail maintenance sidings. They are proposed to be reconfigured and turned to face towards Bedford Station. At the moment, they face down towards Bedford St John's, but they are required to serve the existing Midland Main Line. So the intention there is to turn them around and effectively replace them on a like-for-like basis. As we go under Ford End Road, we have updated the design here, as Mo said at the start of the call. We've reduced the number of tracks that was shown in the previous iteration of this design from 3 to 2. What that has allowed us to do is to aim to put one track through each of 2 arches of Ford End Road. So what we are aiming to do is to try and eliminate the necessity to partially reconstruct 2 of those spans of Ford End Road. This is a significant opportunity that we are looking at the moment. If there is a need to replace those spans, it will be done in a similar manner to what was undertaken on the Midland Main Line when that was electrified a few years ago. So where you change from having a brick arch span to having a much flatter span to enable the electrification to pass underneath it. But what we're trying to do here is everything we possibly can to avoid the demolition of that part of the structure. As we come into Bedford Station, we have an island platform. That is shown as 202 meters long. That is to enable the provision for splitting of and joining of trains in perturbation scenarios. So it's longer than the other platforms on the route. There's additional vertical circulation, so the existing footbridge that's on the station is replaced by a new footbridge slightly to the south, and actually it's probably much better if I go to this nice visualization of the station, as it gives a much better impression of what we're doing. You've got the two East-West Rail tracks coming through, you've got the new station facilities running alongside the railway. You've got the new station footbridge concourse area, which is accessed with vertical circulation from ground level outside. And then you've got additional footbridges at each end of the platform, which work in terms of both vertical circulation between platforms and as a secondary means of escape for the latest safety standards. The design does not preclude the incorporation of the Prebend Street diversion. We are not integrated with that piece of infrastructure specifically because, as I understand at the moment, it is not funded, but our design does not preclude that piece of work. We've got taxi and private car drop-off, we've got bus stops, we've got the multi-storey car park, we've got a reconfigured surface car park. Is there to say on this bit, and then as we head up to Bromham Road, I'll talk about the specifics of that when we get to the next section.
We have a couple of questions.
Yeah.
So
let's go.
Peter, do you want to go?
Oh, sorry. I shouldn't have my hand up.
Oh, okay. No worries.
That's right.
Councillor Atkins. Question.
Thank you. I've got a number of questions, and also Councillor Ben Foley, I can't see him on the call, and I know that this is one of his hot topics, which is the up platform and the necessity for it. So that's my first question. Why aren't you able to put in an up fast? Is it an up fast platform?
Up fast platform, yeah. Yes.
And also, are you reconsidering that, please? That's my first question. I've got a couple more.
I think I'll take the first question on Upfast platform. As part of the 2023 route update announcement and the reporting there, we undertook extensive modelling. You'll remember, Colleen, and we presented that to the collective in as far as we tried to give the 4-track, i.e. the existing railway, the best fighting chance, if you like, so to speak, to be able to accommodate the EWR train service pattern. After undertaking the modelling work, we actually, our conclusion was that the Upfast platform does not help us. In fact, it wasn't just the Upfast platforms. There was a number of other measures and interventions we actually included in those models. And even with all of those capacity improvements and all of those scopes included within the model, we were unable to actually meet the TSS that we'd specified for ourselves. So in a world in which we actually cannot meet our TSS, we have to build 2 additional tracks. And if we are segregated, then an Upfast platform does not improve the case for EWR to share the existing track. However, we are sympathetic to the use of the Upfast platform. We do think it's a good thing for Bedford Station in general, and we have gone as far as actually not precluding it in our designs, i.e. we've actively provided passive provision for it. Should someone come forward and fund it, then there is conversations to be had around, who delivers it and how it's delivered. But currently, as things stand, the Upfast platform does not actually improve the modelling or the operations north of Bedford, and as such are not within the core scope of EWR.
Thank you. That will be a topic of disagreement. I know by several councillors and ourselves. The next ones I think we can probably put together. There's a lot of worry about congestion for the station, coming into the station, and the other one is about the car park, that the car park is proposed car park is way out of what the street scene looks like, and whether you have looked at alternatives, or whether you're still looking at alternatives to move it. And then I've got another question about something completely different.
Sorry, could you just help me, because there's quite a few car parks on the plan. Which
Presumably
sorry,
you're talking about the main multi-storey car park on
yes,
Ashburnham Road.
Yeah,
Okay.
and congestion of traffic coming into the new station. There's likely to be congestion.
And I think this goes back to the previous question that Eric asked, really. I think there's going to be both modelling that's going to take place during the construction of EWR as well as during the operation of the scheme. In general terms, these things will take a few months, if not, a few months at the very least, to actually develop and calibrate and develop the actual findings from that. So the first step would be to develop a model that tells us what the actual issues are and where we actually have an impact on the capacity of the junctions and other improvements that would, so the impact first, and then we'll need to come up with the mitigations as part of that work, and then plug it into the model and see whether the mitigations actually fix the problem. But I think I think the general message is that from an EWR staff perspective, it's not lost on us that the actual traffic is a problem even without East West Rail. So I think that's probably something that we are taking into account in the development of the designs.
Thank you. And the very large multi-storey car park, have you looked at other places to put it, or how would you mitigate the overbearing of it? I'm not disagreeing that there should be a multi-storey car park. It's just where it is and what it looks like.
So I think broadly, I think the short answer is yes. We are looking at ways to minimize the visual impact of the car park on local residents, so we continue to do so. Some of it is to do with looking at whether the capacity provided or re-provided is absolutely necessary, and whether we can actually reduce some of our demand numbers via modelling and understanding that. But equally, as part of the consultation process, a lot of people have come forward and asked me, and I imagine, John, you've been asked the same question about splitting the car park, for example, so that two smaller multi-storey car parks are built on Ashburnham Road. For example, these things have been put forward, and a raft of other suggestions have been made by residents of the town, and all of those will be taken into account and considered duly before we come back out for a statutory consultation. So Colleen, yes, we are reconsidering our proposals. This is, our best attempt that's out in the public domain. We continue to refine the scheme. Design has not stopped and will not stop for the foreseeable, I don't think.
Okay, thank you very much. And my final question is about the Caldwell Walk sidings. The majority of that, this is probably for land and property, but the majority of that area, I think, is owned by a person or a company, and there's a lot of rented property businesses down there, so which they don't get the same sort of compensation. But would the businesses be getting support and help to relocate from there?
That is a landed property matter. You're quite correct. We have discussed this with the council, the borough council, and although there is no help in relocating physically from East West Rail, if the tenants, the leaseholders, do have a compensable interest, then we certainly will be paying compensation in accordance with the compensation code. It is not part of the DCO process to help find alternative premises, but we can certainly help with the compensation.
Thank you.
We have met one of the tenants. Yes, well, he's a freeholder actually. He's a small business, and he tells us he owns a freehold. And we met with him yesterday, and we'd like to meet the others as soon as possible, both freeholders and leaseholders, so we can get a clear picture of Caldwell Walk.
Thank you. I will certainly pass that on to some of the businesses. Thank you.
Thank you. Over to Zara. Do you have a question?
Hello, thank you. Back to the car park. I think what Colleen was kind of getting at was not just about the fact that it's one enormous car park. It's more about kind of how you are taking into account the how it fits with existing structures. So how you're going to make it sympathetic to the existing area. There's quite a diverse. It's not geography, is it? What's it called if it's buildings?
Architecture.
Architecture, there we go. Thank you very much. There's quite a diverse architecture along Ashburnham Road, not all of it beautiful, but the construction of a brand new station and all the extra groundwork and the multi-storey car park is going to make quite a significant difference to the area. So correct me, Colleen, but I think that's what you were implying, and I don't think that was really addressed. And then secondly, kind of around the design, how are you taking into account kind of public safety? This is a big car park, and I guess the same would apply to the one at the hospital. Multi-storey car parks are notoriously, problematic in terms of just the basic things like lighting, security, access to the station for people, using it. How are all those kind of public safety measures being taken into account and addressed? And because obviously that's not covered in this stage of the consultation, will that be something we can feed into, or is that going to be presented differently? Thank you.
I think, your first point about a design that's aesthetically pleasing or is befitting the area is certainly the kind of thing that other major infrastructure projects have done, including High Speed 2. However, I don't think I'm in a position just yet where I can come and tell you that commitment will be made by East West Rail. I think that will come along. I think later on in the process, and actually, I think, Zara, in general terms, both questions that you asked are actually answered during the detailed design stage of the scheme, and those kind of things are actually taken forward sometimes very close to the DCO, but most often after the DCO. Whether you will have the opportunity as a councillor to actually influence that, I should take away and look at in more detail. But actually, there is a level of public scrutiny, as well as a voice for the local authority to be able to influence those designs. I think that's a fact for us to come and give you an undertaking that will actually make it a brick kind of structure is something I don't think we can do at this stage. But yes, security aspects on all of those really generally do come in the detailed design stage. What we're really focused on, I think, putting it very crudely, is how much land do we need and how much environmental impact are we going to cause. I note that actually, a car park that actually is befitting of the environment that it sits in is helpful, but actually that level of detail is not contained within the DCO process. It's more about how high the car park is, how many floors there are, what land you require, are the works permanent, are they temporary? So that comes in later, but there's definitely an opportunity to set up design groups and discuss those matters.
The only thing I'd add to that, though, Mo, is obviously when we do get to detailed design, as it's a railway car park, then it will have to be compliant with technical specifications for interoperability, which includes persons with reduced mobility. So it will have wider stairwells, lifts, all that good stuff that the railway infrastructure has, it tends to be above and beyond what your shopping centre car park would have. The finishes and the like, as Mo said, that's going to form part of the detailed design and architectural boards. And lighting and security, that'll be governed by rail standards.
Great, thank you. Just before I go to Michael, we'd be really interested to hear any feedback around Bedford Station as well. So if there are any specific feedback points you have on the station or the facilities or how people access the station. So something to think about whilst we go to Michael for your question.
Yeah, thank you. I was going to come in on another aspect of safety on the car park. I know what you're saying about the
Microphone's pointing in the air, I think. You're very quiet.
Apologies. Yes, I'll start again. I wanted to come back on another aspect of safety around the car parks. I know what you said about different stages of the process, but given the relatively recent fire at Luton Airport, multi-storey car park, I think we'd want to make the case for making sure these car parks, both this one and the other one we've just been mentioning, fully equipped with sprinklers and fire suppression equipment.
Again, that'll be something that will be governed by standards. Obviously, things do change. I think that was started by a battery fire. I think standards at the moment only require fire suppressant and sprinklers when you've got underground car parks.
I think our point is we want you to go beyond the standards.
That's fair enough. Yeah, I'm just saying sort of like where our baseline is, and it's so early at this stage. We haven't even got an outline design other than what Mo's described, which is sort of like sizing. But the outline and detailed design will pick up all items like that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I say if you've heard us now, it might influence your thinking as you go to the next stage.
Yeah, of course.
Great. Any other feedback points or questions around Bedford Station?
Well, I suppose the question I would ask for feedback on really is we've spoken a lot about obviously the scale of the car park, and yes, it is a large building, but what do you think would be appropriate other items to consider? Mo said about potentially splitting the car park. We've obviously shown a temporary surface car park south of Ford End Road. Have you got any other thoughts on? Do you think there's a better solution? Really, all ears for feedback.
Pauline?
Yeah, I think I was asking whether it could be further back as opposed to being right on the road. The car park goes at the back towards Bromham Road Bridge. Would that be a better place to put it as opposed to being right on the road and everyone can see it and the height of it from there?
Yeah, so there is an opportunity to have some multi-storey car park in this area. You just got to note the shape of it, that being a wedge of land, it's not obviously an efficient space for having necessarily that multi-storey design, but there's certainly scope to have something in that area which could then reduce the height of the one on Ashburnham Road. I don't think you could fit the entire car park on that piece of land without it being extremely tall, but certainly splitting between the two could be an alternative.
I like the idea of a split one because it means that motorist drivers would have an option, and whether that would help with the traffic flow, I don't know the answer. I'm just asking the question or making the suggestion.
Okay. What about the surface car park that's been suggested over on the west? What if that was a multi-storey car park instead of having something on Ashburnham Road?
It's an option. I think I'd like to see a little bit more about it. It's not my area, as I say. It's Councillor Ben Foley's area, and he would probably be better placed to make comments on it. But I think just any options rather than the big overbearing one in Ashburnham Road would be advantageous.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Eric?
Yeah, I've just got a general comment. Not put down. Is when you come to do the design, the physical appearance of the station surrounds, can you make it iconic, interesting, and actually make it something which adds to the public realm there, not just a low-cost functional building? Because I have to say that the station at Bletchley, has been done so far. It's not very exciting, and this is going to be a public building for generations. So the ask there is to make it exciting as much as you possibly can within cost parameters.
I think the key consideration is that last sentence that you just said there, Eric, because it's within cost parameters, isn't it? But I think I totally get the from your perspective the need for an iconic or an aspirational or a good station there. I accept that, but if the funding envelope allows it,
Well,
then
if necessary, then expand the design of it to include some office space or something like that, which you can make money out of it, which actually can then be put into having a really good building. You know, you guys will be all gone, and we're the ones got to live with it. You see.
Yes, that is something we're exploring. I think I should just draw the line, and as far as the DCO only allows us to build a railway between Oxford and Cambridge, and we cannot actually seek powers to build offices, for example, as part of a station to fund the station. If you see what I mean, you'll tell me that's just a mechanism thing, and you're absolutely
No,
right.
but
It is just a
I hear what you're
mechanism.
saying.
Yeah.
But it does working in partnership with the borough potentially to have in parallel applications to deliver that sort of thing if it lies outside your powers. It's partnership working.
That's right. That's right.
Or even there are plenty of land supply developed. There are big developers out there wanting to build big sheds and things. You could partner with one of these things who will come and see this opportunity to put some office space in there, which will actually bring people into the town, because I question how many people would use the station otherwise. So it's just thoughts, really.
I think what I can say is we are exploring those opportunities, and that is something that we are considering. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And we'll continue to do so. Yeah.
Thank you. Pauline, is it okay if we just go to Peter Norris first, just because he hasn't spoken yet? Thank you.
It was just to follow on from Eric's question, which was that there have been plans in the past, not too distant past, for the whole station complex, and buildings and office spaces and car parking, etc. But I would imagine that the borough has already spoken to you about that. That was just for information.
Right, thank you, Colin.
Yes, we're aware of master planning work. Yes, and it does influence our proposals in the area.
Peter,
could I just relate to something that came out of the Fenny Stratton to Kempston meeting earlier on this week, where considering the consolidated proposal for ending up with 5 new stations, I think it was. It became apparent that East West Rail, if it went to the consolidated option, would not be funding the new stations, but they will be funded instead by private finance. Is there any read across from that comment to A, the new St John's station, and B, the changes due to Midland Station? In other words, are they being paid for completely by East West Rail as part of its budget, or are they looking for financial assistance from elsewhere to help towards the cost?
Towards the cost of the stations themselves, Peter, is that a question? The current assumption is that it's self-contained, and we are seeking budget and funding as a standalone. So we will be funding our stations ourselves, and are exploring the opportunity of third-party funding for other elements of the scheme. But as things currently stand, this is the minimum viable product and can be delivered entirely within the cost envelope we're seeking powers for.
Thank you, Madam.
Yeah.
That's me.
Okay, thank you. I think Leah just very kindly reminded us of the question that we had from the councillor earlier around the noise at the sidings.
So in terms of the specifics of what the existing noise levels are and what the proposed noise levels would be, I don't have a quantifiable number I can give. But as I understand from the Borough Council, they were rather keen on this as a location and saw it as a much quieter neighbour than some of the existing businesses that are on this site.
That's right. In the examination for the 2040 local plan that I got a transcript for, there was some sort of soft endorsement for the proposal in as far as it actually reduces the nature of the noise and the operations of that site. So I think in general terms, we're expecting an improvement on the noise levels as a result of our proposals. Unusually, I should add, but yes, I think this is one where we're expecting a reduction in noise levels, but that will be demonstrated by the modelling John and team are undertaking in the next stage of the design.
It's probably just worth reminding that this is designed as stabling. This infrastructure that we're proposing. This is not for not a heavy maintenance or light maintenance depot or anything like that. It's replacement of stabling tracks. So it's literally parking your trains there. So yeah, it's probably not what a lot of people think would be going on there.
Yeah, and just to reiterate the point that Mo mentioned about modelling, so as part of the environmental impact assessment, baseline surveys will need to be undertaken just to understand the difference between the baseline levels of noise and the expected levels of noise during construction and operation. And then any potential mitigation either during construction or operation that's needed will be identified through that process.
Brilliant. Thank you, Leah. So I think that's right on time. We've just finished the Bedford station area. So John, if you're happy to, if we start to move north.
I'm going to do this very quickly because I'm conscious we've got 21 minutes left. So from Bromham Road, as we've said earlier in the call, the proposal is for 2 additional tracks to the east of the Midland Main Line. So those tracks would run parallel to the existing railway for approximately 900 metres. Where we pass under Bromham Road, it would be necessary to provide an additional span to that structure. So back in 2020, when the Midland Main Line was electrified, the brick arch structure that was there was replaced with 2 flatter deck spans. It would be necessary to add a 3rd span on the eastern side to accommodate the 2 additional tracks. The intention would be that the highway would remain at the same level due to the existing gradients heading to the east. The opportunity for realignment of that road is extremely limited. So the design proposes to have the tracks slightly lower relative to the Midland Main Line to be able to gain that clearance under the structure before we then come back up to the same level as the Midland Main Line. We've got some crossovers between the 2 pieces of rail infrastructure, and then we stay with these 2 additional tracks through the Poets area, where we're obviously very aware of the impact on properties. As we then go north of the Poets area, on the western side of the railway, we have got some proposed drainage attenuation and environmental mitigation with access to that site. We've go past the UKPN substation site. There is reconfiguration of that substation in the vicinity of itself, necessary where the East-West Rail tracks run alongside its current boundary fence. Once we're past UKPN, the East-West Rail tracks diverge from the Midland Main Line and start to climb. We cross the A6 Great Ouse Way. It is necessary to realign the A6 Great Ouse Way because we cross it effectively at grade. I'll show a bit more detail on that on the next drawing, but the alignment of the A6 goes over the railway before dropping down to the roundabout here. Just north of the A6, we go onto Viaduct, so that crosses the River Ouse. It then crosses the A6 Paula Radcliffe Way. It crosses the River Ouse again before crossing Clapham Road, and the abutment of that viaduct where we go from structure to earthworks is the limit of the of Route Section 3, which is the Bedford area that I'm responsible for. Within this area, there is a lot of environmental mitigation. There's lots of other pieces of necessary infrastructure in terms of drainage ponds, access roads. We've got utility diversions. There's a lot of environmental mitigation following the River Ouse. The pink hatched areas are to do with the utility construction zones. So that's where certain utilities are being rerouted. And if I go on to the profile here, you can see that the vertical alignment of East West Rail as we go across the floodplain is up to just the track level is just under 18 meters above ground level at its highest point. The vertical design through here is dictated by the clearance over Paula Radcliffe Way. So what we're trying to do is get under the Great Ouse Way, over Paula Radcliffe Way, and there is effectively a fixed gradient or two fixed levels that you're trying to get between. And then as we go off this drawing and into the core section, the elevation through here is dictated by what's happening as we head towards Cambridge. I'll just go on to this drawing. You can see the A6 Great Ouse Way realignment in a little more detail. The intention with the A6 realignment is to keep it as close to existing as possible whilst being offline. So the idea is that it is constructed largely offline, and then it is tied in over a long weekend or a series of weekends in terms of actually getting that final alignment integrated with the existing road network. But the idea is with this one is that it has it minimises the impact on the existing highway during construction. I think that's the whistle stop tour. I know there's going to be lots of comments on this, so I think it's probably best if I go back to all of you good people to feedback.
Great, thanks, John. I've got a question from Colleen.
Thank you. First of all, I think there are three distinct discussions on this. One is the Poets area, one is the A6, and then the third one is the viaduct. And I would find it helpful if we could take those in turn, as opposed to jumping from one to the other.
Happy to do that.
Mo will know that at each of the LRG meetings, Zara and I have made it quite clear that we oppose the demolitions of any homes. I wonder if you could, I was going to say blow up, but enlarge the screen so that we could take a look at the Poets ones. That's better, thank you very much. First of all, you will note that the numbers go across, so we can't actually see some of the houses which are affected, and I was wondering if we can have a map without those numbers on, so that I can actually see exactly where the lines are going, the red line is. That's by the by. The first thing, we'll start with Bromham Road Bridge. And I mentioned this at a meeting on Tuesday when I went to the St Neots consultation event. The Bromham Road Bridge, obviously none of this, we don't support any of this, but need to talk it through. If you notice on where you've got the turning point for Spencer Road at the very bottom, there is a community garden there. And when the Network Rail were doing the reconstruction and the whole road was closed, that the community garden was lost. And I did mention this to Tristan on Tuesday, so he is aware of it. But there's also some 5 very mature 150-year-old trees, plane trees, in that area. And I would like to make sure that they are protected. and I support, or I don't mind, the stopping up in Chaucer Road. As we move on to the demolition of homes, as I say, we cannot under any circumstances support it, and I'm really pleased to see that the council have yet again supported a 4-track, believe that the 4-track is an option, and that the 6 tracks are not necessary. So we will be supporting the council's view on that. I've got lots and lots of questions to ask about individual bits of it. I have mentioned that the curve that is planned for Milton Road and Sydney Road, that is looked at again to see if it is possible not to take any of that garden from number 5 Milton Road, whether there's a chance of stopping up the road as options, but I'd like that to be looked at, whether the roads could be stopped up. I haven't got the feedback from residents in the road, so that is at the moment, that is just my comment, but whether it's an option. The other one is that Chesterton Mews and Milne Row are all joined, the houses. They are not separate houses, and whether demolition of some will affect the others. And that's my comments for the actual properties, because, as I say, I had a really good meeting at St Neots with Martin Wheeler, Melissa Durham, and Tristan Lincoln Gordon. But the other thing that I mentioned at that time was about blight compensation, and also about they want to sell, the need to sell, and definitely the houses that are not in the red lines, but are just outside it and are going to be severely affected, that we do need some proper compensation, and not at the very end, not a year after the whole thing has been completed, but they are going to be experiencing huge disruptions. I did talk to Tristan about the code of construction, is it called? And that was really helpful. But I'll stop there. I could go on all day about it. But yeah, and as I say, Mo has heard our reasoning and comments many times. So,
and I think largely speaking, Colleen, these are all things that we're taking into account in the development of the statutory consultation. So thanks very much for that. I think the reinstatement of the garden you refer to, the reduction in terms of land take to allow for that highway solution, as well as the various other points you make, all things that we're taking into account. The compensation code I can't really comment on, but the other engineering aspect, yes, totally in agreement.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Ian, do you want to come in there at all around the blight and compensation?
Only to say we will be complying with the compensation code because we have to. And I'm afraid, Colleen, the people outside the red line boundary, those who are not safeguarded, it is part 1 of the Land Compensation Act 1973 that applies, and that does kick in a year and a day after the scheme becomes operational, I'm afraid.
We'll have to get it changed.
Thanks, Ian. Eric, have you got a question?
Well, I've got questions, but not about this section. So, I mean, our friend here wanted to split it up, so I'll hold fire if you like.
Yeah, does anyone else have any feedback or questions on this specific area? Zara, do you?
I mean, I do have questions, but I have a feeling that they might be kicked down the road slightly. Sorry, my camera's not working. A fuse blew in the house, which is why I disappeared offline briefly. And now when I've kind of come back on, my camera's not working. So I hope you can all hear me, if not see me. But yeah, I mean, Colleen and I obviously have, we raise this repeatedly, and Mo must be sick of us. But there are issues around the Alexandra Sports Centre, around the kind of the impact, environmental and kind of socioeconomic and kind of just general lived experience of people within that area. It is unique. I know we bang on about it a lot, but it is uniquely affected. I have a feeling this is not the right kind of time to raise it, that you'll be telling me that the specifics around the location of depots and bits and pieces are still being considered, but just really to get it on record that there is a huge amount of dissatisfaction with how this particular part of the route is being handled. Yeah, I mean, if there are any comments about your plans for the Alexandra Sports Centre or the ground around it, that would be welcome. Yeah, any mitigations that you can do. I mean, Councillor Headley raised earlier, we want you to go beyond the bare minimum. As much as it's very convenient to be able to refer to kind of statutory obligations, other infrastructure projects have gone beyond. It would be lovely if you felt so inclined to do so. And we will kind of obviously all keep pushing for that. But yeah, just on record to say not happy.
Yeah, accept that, Zara. I think it's only fair. I think nothing to add to that, really. I think the Alexandra Sports Centre, we take about, I think if not mistaken, about a 7-meter strip from them. I'm being very precise. Let's say 5 to 10 meters, in the interest of not getting it wrong in this forum. And that requirement is both temporary, and then there's a reduction in that during the permanent stage. We've spoken to the university about it. We're in discussions about our impact on them and how that can be mitigated, including if they wish to actually redesign their playing fields, or if there's anything else they'd like to do. These are conversations we're having with them. But in terms of our impact on them, I think it's slightly less onerous as the Poets area itself. I think the residential properties are really being impacted a lot more. I don't think I've got the impression that our proposals do result in a point where the playing fields are no longer usable. It's just that they will have to be redesigned. But that, again, I think I'm just speculating here. And once again, just very much like the hospital conversation, that will be subject to conversations with them as well. And these will be happening now in this stage between now and statutory consultation. So hopefully by the time we come out of statutory consultation, you'll have more details about what our impact on the playing fields are.
Thank you. And obviously you can't see me, so but I was looking as if I wanted to follow up on something, so that's why my hand's gone back up again. I appreciate that. What I think in terms of kind of future planning would be hugely appreciated would be a commitment from yourselves as an organisation to engage. I know you've engaged with a particular interest group within the Poets area, but to engage with the wider community about the sorts of mitigations. And I've had conversations with one of your former CEOs about the sort of mitigations that could be made available. It would be really good to know at what point those discussions become realistic, at what point, there's lots of promises being made, there's lots of we'll get to this.
Yes.
Some definite time frame of when people can actually have meaningful conversations about the sorts of mitigations, not just about blight, not about planting trees to cover up noise, not about double glazing, but what are you going to give back to the community that is uniquely affected?
That's a really good point. Thanks, Zara. We will put in an action to talk to our engagement lead for this area, and we will get that factored in. Sorry, we are running short on time, so we've only got a few minutes left. So if it's okay, we can go back over to you, Eric.
No, I want to continue on this area, please.
Well, you've got any time.
Sure. Yeah.
Sorry, Eric. And the other thing I was going to say is that this is our only chance to talk to you. We've got the time. I hope that you can have the time to answer our questions as well, rather than cut us off. And I didn't mean that in a sharp way, sorry. I've got two questions. One is about, the Alexander Sports Field is in the local plan as a green space. So hopefully that will stay that. But my question is about this compound at the back of Beverley Crescent, and the Beverley Crescent are just outside, or there's one or two gardens it looks like are within the red line. Has there been consultation with local residents about the mitigation of noise, etc., from the compounds?
Sorry, Colleen, I didn't get the last question. Has there been
consultations or talks with local residents who back onto from Beverley Crescent, who back onto that purple area, which I think is a compound?
Yeah, I think not to my knowledge, is what I would say, Colleen, although I would have to check the records. This is the process we're going through, in as far as we've only matured our construction compounds to a point where we can actually consult on it. Just so this is, I mean, essentially, the non-statutory consultation has kickstarted this process, and as part of the actual consultation event, we've had people provide feedback, and we hope that that feedback will be received as part of the consultation as well. So it will be a formal response. But equally, if you feel like we should be going out to speak to them, I'm willing to take away an action to do that as well at the close of the consultation.
Thank you. Yes, I've had some feedback from residents in Beverley Crescent that they heard something way back months and months and months ago, but they've not heard anything since. So, okay, I'll follow that up with you later. Thank you.
Yeah, it sounds like we need to clarify something to them. That's fine. Yeah.
That's really great feedback. Thank you. If you're happy to, are we finished on this area? Are you happy, Colleen, that we're finished?
We're never finished on this area.
For tonight. Just to let everyone know.
Happy to move on. Yeah.
These workshops will be ongoing throughout the year, so we're planning to do them every 2 or 3 months. And as I said, next time we hope to meet you in person, so we will be able to go over a lot more detail. Eric, I think we have time just for your questions or feedback.
Excellent.
And then we'll wrap
That's
up.
great. Thank you very much. I just want to draw your attention, based on the conversation just been had, with HS2, there are funding opportunities there. So there, and you may want to investigate that, the home owners payment scheme for properties up to 300 meters from the line. So if they can do that for HS2, why can't it be done for this? And they got all other funding, community and environment, business and local economy funds. I just wanted to draw your attention to that, where that is to help people build on what is going to happen. Moving on very quickly, freight. I've understand through the grapevine, other people attending various events, etc., that you're looking to potentially revisit the 1 in 80 gradient to a 1 in 100 gradient. And I just wanted to be clear, are you going to do that? Because if you do that, that will make a difference to the height of the viaduct. And it's very unfortunate that Clapham is split into two here, because the embankment, the cutting and the embankment are very much part of this. So that's my first question. Are you looking to have a redesign here?
So yeah, gradients are being considered across the route, as you say, from a freight perspective. So yes, the preference. I think, Peter, we discussed this quite at length at the consultation event. In an ideal world, the preference would be go as flat as 1 in 120. 1 in 100 would be a minimum, and a 1 in 80 would be the absolute limit, depending on specific constraints. So it's not to say that everything could go to a 1 in 120 or could go to 1 in 100, but it has to be looked at holistically to make sure that you've got the right balance of that solution.
So when are you likely to have the outcome of that? Because if you change the gradient through here, it will change the land take and potentially the alignment, because you might have to get the height to get over the hill. You might have to change the radius of that viaduct, and clearly our interests as a parish will then change because the impacts may be or may not be slightly different.
So that is being undertaken and will be part of the statutory consultation.
But it's a bit late. I mean, this is great what you're doing at the moment, but it's going to be a bit late. Well, the statutory consultation, what you're presenting is something different to what was being presented now. So I would like to think between now and then, if there are going to be changes here, that you will share them, so we have an opportunity to comment on them. And it just makes it easier when you get to DCO, because you're reducing the number of objections potentially by having that discussion as you go along.
I think it's not unreasonable for us to take away the action of sharing the designs with you as soon as we can, but we're bound by governance. I think we've got to take that proposal through governance, I think, is probably what I'll say. So I think, I think you'll appreciate there's iterations of the design gets assured, then it gets frozen. Then, yeah. So I think I'm just nervous to overcommit in this forum and not be able to meet.
I fully understand that.
I don't think you're asking for something unreasonable. That's just for the record. I don't think that's fair. Yes.
Yeah, I got lots of comments to make, not which you'll get back in the consultation. Well, not me, the parish council, but they may change slightly depending on what happens there. The second bit was about the A6 there. Now there is an aspiration by the borough in the longer term that the A6 should be dualled, and it's not a matter for you, but the design you're doing for that realignment, I would say it must be it wouldn't predicate future dualling, and so that is just again to put it out there that those sort of considerations must be. Otherwise, if you come up with a design there and you can't do anything in the future, traffic as bad as it is, and it'll only get worse in 10, 15, 20 years.
Sorry to interrupt, John. If you could just really quickly answer that question, because I think you do have an answer for that, and then we'll have to wrap up.
Yeah, so it was something that was raised on the 3rd of December when we spoke with the Borough Council, that the existing highway was designed to be dualled, but because of finances, it was only put in, although the structure of the road is capable of taking a dual carriageway, the road that was built at the top of the structure is only a single carriageway. So I will need to take it away with the highways team to confirm the parameters of that, because I don't know the specific answer off the top of my head, but I will go and ask that question.
Great, thank you, John. Thanks everyone. Unfortunately, we have reached the end of the workshop session. However, please do feel free to put any other comments or questions into the chat, and we will incorporate them into our notes and we will get back to you. Alternatively, Sarah is always around. If you have any other comments or questions, just drop them to Sarah and she can pass them on to the technical team. As mentioned, we do have some upcoming workshops planned, so Sarah will be in touch with you in the coming months to give you more details around them and hopefully see some of you in person. And finally, I hope that you will...
Sorry, I've got my hand up.
So, yeah, okay.
Thank you. Yeah, I will just reiterate that this is such an important area that I would have liked it to not feel rushed. But the question is that you said at the beginning that this was going to go online and that it would be transcribed. Could you tell me roughly when that will happen, please? And also, I think that that both Eric and Peter have got a lot of expertise or a lot of knowledge about this last area, the viaduct, etc. I know that Zara also wanted to make some comments as well, but as you've said, we are at the end of time. But if you could let us know when this will happen, when the transcript will be.
Of course, yeah. So we aim for around 7 working days for the transcript. So at some point the week commencing the 20th for the full summary notes. So
Okay,
in
but
that week.
the 20th is only 4 days before the close of the consultation, and some residents and others who were not able to attend this meeting might have found it useful.
Okay, we can look to get those out earlier and give people plenty of time before
Thank
the
you.
end of consultation.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Colleen. Thank you. So yeah, thank you everyone for attending this evening. Sorry we only had 2 hours, and we will feed that back when we're planning the future workshops to ensure that everyone has the right amount of time to spend on giving feedback. We really appreciate your time this evening, and we look forward to speaking with you soon.
And Chloe, I'll just add, I think to Zara's point, any questions, yeah, I think you said it, and I'll repeat it again.
Yeah.
If there's any follow-up questions that people want to ask, I think do get in touch with Sarah, and it'll come my way, it'll come John's way, and we'll do our best to answer you. I think I'll commit to that on this call comfortably.
Yeah, that's
So
brilliant. Just send those
Sarah,
over to Sarah and Jake.
Zara, if there's any questions you want to ask us, do feel free to do that, yes.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye.